And I'm going
Oh,
to
great.
myself and let you have it from here.
Okay, thank you so much, Melissa. Yikes. So I told Melissa she had to quit scaring me with that picture. None of you would even recognize me if you met me in person now, because I don't even recognize that picture of me. So we will have to get a more current picture uploaded. But I have been with Will Hoyt since 2003. I hired in as actually a temp in the corporate office. And I was doing a favor for a friend, well, actually my sister-in-law, who was the compliance director at that time. She just desperately needed help, and I had just left a long-term position elsewhere. And I said, fine, I'll do it. Well, May of 2003 has now turned into, November of 2020. So I'm not sure, did I do her a favor or she did me a favor there? But I was with the compliance department until October of last year. I was the assistant compliance director at that time, and we relocated. My husband's job relocated us to Wichita Falls. So at that point, I took over a property, and it was a property that was just nearing, probably in the middle of lease up. It was about half occupied when I got here. And so we finished that up, and I can tell you this last year has been the most amazing learning experience. So I really look forward to working with property managers even more, because I guess I can say I feel your pain. I've physically and in person experienced, a lot of the things that happen on property now. And I hope that in turn makes me better at sharing experiences with you and teaching the compliance stuff. So Melissa put together yesterday this PowerPoint. She always has my back, because we had a couple of disasters this weekend here on site. Had a car into the end of a building Sunday evening. Friday evening, we had a 3-floor flood, the opposite end of the same building. So needless to say, Monday and Tuesday were a little crazy. And so she actually put together this PowerPoint. They're kind of high points taken from the compliance FAQ that you can find in ERP. So if you have been on the FAQ and there's other items you would like to address, please use the chat and pop a few questions in there or suggestions, because we just pulled some random items, and we definitely want to spend time talking about or covering what you really want to know and what you need covered. But we pulled a few things up to just kind of get us going. So Melissa, if you would like to get my picture off there, that'd be great. Move on to that next slide. We will get started. And like I said, y'all don't hesitate. I've got the chat pulled up, and I will watch that if you want to get us going in another direction. So one thing, and oh, Raphael, I don't have too many connections in Wichita Falls. I haven't been here long enough yet. But good question. I'll keep that in mind. How soon can an application be started for a new move-in? Obviously, as soon as you have a vacant unit, you want to get started on it, right? You want to get that unit leased, because you want to turn, the moment they're out, you want to turn that unit and have someone else in and collect rent ASAP. As this says, the technical rule, everything must be within 120 days of move-in date. Best practice certainly is to work about 60 days out on a new move-in, especially. because people's lives change. If you're working about 60 days out, that gives you a good 30 days to get the file worked, approved. Hopefully, it doesn't take that long. Hopefully, it takes about 10 days max, and then 30 days to get them moved in. But always keep in mind you don't want that paperwork to go out of date, and you don't want too much time to pass where they've changed jobs twice before the actual move-in date. I don't know if any of you have had that come up against that as yet. I have, not multiple times, not just since I've been here at the property, but, you know, working in compliance, we've had that happen a lot. The day they come to move in, they're like, oh, well, I don't work at Walmart anymore. So as kind of a supplement to what this slide says about working 60 days out, be sure you're also asking those follow-up questions at move-in as you're asking them to sign that tenant income certification. Say this, you know, this is a synopsis of your financial situation as we took from your application. This shows your Walmart employment annualized at $12,200. You're still at Walmart, correct? Kind of make sure you're following up on that. Okay, moving right along. Our next one, can a move-in be completed if housing is paying the deposit but it hasn't been received yet? Absolutely. Make sure you have the written documentation that states housing will be paying the deposit. If you have that, you can proceed. With a current resident, if you have a, and I would imagine you've ran into this with COVID, or if not, you will in the next month or two. I have several residents that have reached out to different organizations for like a one-time assistance. They're not on housing, but they've reached out to, like, I'm trying to think of local organizations like Interfaith or any of those organizations. Catholic Charities does one-time rent payments a lot here in this area. And again, just reach out. The key to all of this is getting something in writing from the organization that they are going to make that payment, whether it is the housing with a deposit or another organization with a rent payment. But as long as you have something in writing, you can always proceed. Mortgages on the credit report, what do I need? Documentation is key here. So for each and every mortgage listed, you're going to ask them to do a separate self-affidavit. And just like this says, have them write out exactly the Bank of America mortgage on my credit is for a house at, include the address. I sold this home in 2011. So if we're dealing with this in real time, it's 2020. They state I sold this home in 2011. Then you're done. It's not recent. It's not within the last 2 years. So we're not following up on did they sell it for more or less than fair market value. This one self-affidavit is going to close it up and you will be done. The other example here says, you know, a lot of people, we just purchased our home a year ago this month here. Within the first 60 days, our mortgage was sold twice. So on my credit, I probably should look at that. There could very well be 3 mortgages for this same home. You know, 2 of them should show 0. One of them, they may not have even reported it because it was such a quick turn, but they can, your applicant could lump those mortgages together if they say, oh yeah, that is where I refinanced, or that is where my mortgage was sold from Bank of America to Bank of the West. Then they could say, you know, that is exactly what they would say. The Bank of America mortgage sold to Bank of the West. They are both for the home at 123 South Main Street. Those self-affidavits, because this home was sold outside of our 2-year time frame where we're looking at disposed of assets, those affidavits would just go into their detailed credit report. You would not have to include them like as part of the tax credit file, but they need to be in the detailed credit report so that when compliance goes through, they will see, oh, well, I don't need to ask any more questions about this. A resident had a baby since their last recertification. What do I need to collect? An unborn child being born is a very simple issue, not issue, baby's not an issue. It's very simple as far as tax credit goes. As this says, since the household member gave birth, you do not have to go through the add-on process. This isn't an addition to the household. More than likely, we knew about this child during the last certification because the household probably disclosed the pregnancy, expecting a child in such and such date. You would just need to, in one site, as this says, add the baby to the summary page so that they're generated on the next, when you go to generate your next recertification. And biggest thing, be sure to change that unborn child, if it was listed as an unborn the previous year, from 1 back to 0. That happens a lot, where that doesn't get changed back to 0, and then everyone is so confused, you know, like, why do I have so many people in this household? Who's who? So you just need to look for that and change that back to 0. Good morning, Tommy. Welcome. We only add the baby at the next recert. Yes. Yes. We honestly don't need anything from them. I will try, and it could be because Whittier Place, who is that? Tara. Do you have, if you have a volume button, try pushing that up. I don't know if you dialed in or you're listening via your computer, and I will try to quit turning my head. I have to use my phone because my office computer does not have speakers. Oh no. Okay, I'll just talk louder, and hopefully I won't blow anyone else out. And yes, Raphael, we can input the info early. Yeah, if you see them out on site or they come in to pay their rent and have this newborn baby with them, say, hey, can you tell me real quick, date of birth, name, you know, and you can input that information right then. Remember to give them time to get the Social Security card, because that takes a little while sometimes, especially COVID time. Lord knows how long it will take. I know we've had a lot of issues with our local Social Security office, people not being able to get anything. Who are we giving a 30-day notice to, Raphael? I'm not sure what you're meaning by that. Okay, well, let's move on. We can circle back to that. Can I approve a tick? No, absolutely not. That has to be completed by compliance. Think of it always as self-protection. It's not compliance trying to be crazy and controlling. That is their job, is to make sure everything in that file has translated perfectly onto that tick. So they need to always approve the tick. I know that when you are working on a new move-in and you have, they send you the approval that say we need these 2 minor corrections and then we can approve the tick. I know that can be kind of hard sometimes because maybe the person, you know, doesn't get off work until 5:30 and you really wanted to move them in that day. And compliance has already gone home for the evening. So you can't complete the move-in because you don't have an approved tick for them to sign. And I know Melissa stressed this in new hire training. If we don't have a signed tick, we're not moving them in. So if you have situations like that, reach out to your compliance manager directly and say, here's my situation, here's what time the person can be here, do you have a suggestion? What can we do so that I can still complete this? But please do not approve ticks on your own. That's a compliance deal. Okay, so Raphael said, if the resident refuses to give any info. If you're referencing the newborn, I'm very confused as to why they wouldn't give information on a household member. But I guess technically that answer would be yes. If it comes to recertification time and they refuse to give you the information on a household member, then absolutely, you know, you would not be able to proceed with the recertification and you would issue a 30-day notice. But I'm not sure if that's the situation you're speaking to. Because I'm just not sure why they wouldn't give that information. All it does is help them because it gives them a higher income restriction, you know. Anyway, if that's not it, we can always have a side conversation if you would like to, Raphael, to cover exactly what your situation is that you're referring to. Okay, moving on to real estate. Some more real estate. I guess we already covered mortgages. How do I use the real estate calculator on the calculation worksheet for assets? If it's a current asset and their intentions are to sell and they will not be receiving a monthly income, so they're not going to rent it out, they are not going to have someone paying their mortgage, then all you need to do is complete the fair market value section. This amount should match the assessor's report and be listed on the tick as the same amount. We can, if they have a mortgage on the property, the value of the real estate can be reduced by the amount of mortgage that is owed. I don't know that that's something we want to get into real hot and heavy right now. It would definitely be something to maybe confer with your compliance manager about. But, you know, there is a certain amount on your tick at the bottom where the assets are. There's that passbook rate, that 0.06% that is calculated based on their total, the total assets, and that's added as income to the household unless their actual asset income is higher. At 0.06%, it's not going to add very much. Like, that is such a small, small amount that the value of the real estate should not push them over the income limit. But if you have someone that you feel like the value of the real estate is causing an issue with their assets, making the household over income, again, reach out directly to your compliance manager where they can pull it up in one site and take a look at it with you and see if gathering more information, such as what's the amount of the mortgage owed, would help the household and get them to where they do qualify. What is needed if life insurance is listed on pay stubs or an application? If they mark yes to life insurance on the application, please note that that question says, do you have whole or universal, not term? So if they mark it yes, make sure the first thing you ask is, this is a whole life policy, correct? A lot of people are going to say, I don't know. And you may have to go further into it with them. Most people have term policies. A term policy has no cash value to the holder. It only has value upon their death. So if life insurance is listed on pay stubs, then we're now using that supplement to pay stubs form, and that's the very last question. It says, do you have life insurance? And they would mark yes if it's listed there on their pay stubs, and then mark whether it is whole, term, or universal. If term, that is the only information we need, is what they've done on that supplement to pay stubs form or on a self-affidavit. If it's whole or universal, then we need each policy does need to be listed as an asset on the application, as well as on the under 5 if applicable, and possibly third-party verified if their total assets then exceed $5,000. One question to always ask them, because people will put, if they do have a whole policy, a whole life policy that they do have access to, they can get a cash benefit from right now, they will put the policy value. Well, that might be $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. What we need, though, is what is their actual cash value? Like, what amount of cash could they pull from that policy? And unless they've had the policy for 25 years, the cash value is rarely anywhere near the policy value or the death benefit value. So make sure you question that if they put a giant number on there. Tipped employees, we have a lot of those, I feel like, in tax credits. We have a lot of servers or bartenders or Uber drivers or hairdressers. If your state allows the use of pay stubs, then exactly what is on this PowerPoint is exactly what is on the supplement to pay stubs. If your state requires the use of the employment verification, then you're going to do a self-affidavit with one of these 3 options. And always, not only with this affidavit, but with any self-affidavit, be sure you talk it through with people before they take the pen and just start writing crazy stuff. So there's one of 3 situations. They're either going to tell us, I report all tips. So that means all their tips are reported. If you're using pay stubs, then you should see them all right there. If you've got an employment verification, then that should be filled out on the employment verification, and you will go forward assuming that all tips are reported, that's what they've said. The second option, I receive $50 a week in tips on top of what I report to my employer. So some people tell us that, yeah, my employer only requires that I report a portion, so I typically receive $50 to $100 more per week. Okay, so they've given us a range, 50 to 100, so you're gonna have to use that 100 times 52 as a weekly amount of tips earned in addition to what's reported by the employer, either on the pay stubs or the employment verification. I know we want to always discourage people, and I'm sure Melissa talked about this, of using the exactly what I said, typically receive, or 50 to 100, those ranges, because that creates questions. It can definitely overinflate their income if they use that large range. We have to use that bigger number. So that's another thing to kind of talk through with them. Please think about all year long, if you averaged it out and just give me one number. I receive $75 a week in addition to what I report to my employer. That would probably be the much more accurate calculation. The third option is I receive $100 per week and I do not report any tips. I typically haven't seen this very often over the years. Most positions that are eligible to receive tips, there's a requirement by the employer for those to be reported. But you will, I mean, I'm not going to say, you never say never. You could see this for sure. If their tips are applicable to their job, you must collect this affidavit. So think about those examples that I gave, the waiter, waitress, bartender, Uber driver, pizza delivery, hairdresser, nail tech, lash extension girl, I don't know. But, when they tell you where they work or what they do, really think about what that position entails to know if you need to ask about tips. Oh, this is my least favorite. And I promise every one of you will come up against this at some point while working in property management with tax credit. If a person is paid in cash and has no pay stubs, what do I do? Very first thing, you have to ask, are you contract labor? Are you a 1099 employee? If yes, we proceed as self-employment. If they say, no, I just work for my uncle and, he just throws me some cash here and there. And then there's this guy that I do landscaping with, but he doesn't like to mess with taxes. So, he just gives me a cash portion off of each and every job. Yeah, we can't help them. You always remember, and this is always the explanation I use with people, because they'll get a little salty with you and be like, but I have income. I have income. I used to always say, we are governed by the IRS. We're Section 42. We do not play with unreported cash income. We just can't do it. If they state that, yes, I do expect to be 1099, then we would move forward as self-employment. Self-employment can be quite a booger, just a big bear. And I would, especially as you're still, in the learning process, just let people know, I know we're going to need, several things. You can get started with exactly what this says, the self-employment affidavit, their current year tax return if they did this job last year and they filed as self-employment, and definitely reach out to your compliance managers to say, here's what I have, what more do I need to collect as before I send this file in. And like I said, just let people know ahead of time, if they are self-employed, that there may be quite a bit of documentation, and you're going to reach out and get some guidance, and then you will get back to them with the comprehensive, complete list of what would be needed. Don't be afraid to let people know, hey, I haven't been doing this very long, and I'm going to reach out for some guidance so that I don't have you bring a lot of stuff that maybe I don't need. Always reach out. Make sure you know as much of the situation as you can before you reach out to your compliance manager, and then they can help you with one good list. Would you use an employment verification? In reference to a tipped employee, I don't remember when your question came in, Raphael, I'm sorry. Okay, so who has questions? Do you have other comments? I'm going to wait and let Raphael have time to tell me what he was asking to use the employment verification on, or if that would be the way to go. Something I want to circle back to, I'd actually made note this morning to mention this, and I went right past it. In reference to the like mortgages on a credit or anything to do with real estate, all of you that are in Texas, which I think I saw a couple of Texas people, Texas has a great website for each county. There's a very small handful of counties in Texas that do not have an online system, but it's called the Appraisal Districts. So let's see, Dunes Apartments, Seminole, I think that's Gaines County or something that starts with a G. Anyway, it would just be Gaines Central Appraisal District, or Gaines CAD is what you would look up online. I'm in Wichita County, so it would be Wichita CAD, and that is statewide in Texas. Like I said, almost every single county has an online system that is just fantastic. You'll type in or Wichita CAD, and then at the top it'll either say search our records or property search or something, and you just click on that. Oklahoma has a pretty good online system. It sometimes takes a little more looking. It's not they're not all named exactly the same, but again, your compliance managers deal specifically in your states, and they should be able to tell you right off the top of their head what is, for Oklahoma, what are kind of my options for pulling property values online. In other counties, other states, it's just kind of a hit or miss, but start with the county assessor. Just look up your county. Say you're in Jackson County, Missouri. Just put in Jackson County Assessor's Office, and or just the Jackson County website, and look down through there for Assessor's Office or Appraiser's Office. Tommy, I'm not. Arkansas is probably one of the states that I am the least well versed in. Alicia, your compliance manager, I promise you she knows. Alicia is very much a bookworm. Like, she's all about researching and having things prepared and available. So I would definitely reach out to her and just shoot her a quick email and ask her how you need to look at property in your area. Okay, so going back to Raphael's question, can you use an employment verification on these folks? So here's the deal. If we know someone is paid cash, or if someone just says, I don't receive pay stubs, I would say, can I send an employment verification then? Send it. If we get a sound employment verification back, then we can move forward. Most employers will not fill out an employment verification on someone that they don't have on their books. Because if they are paying someone cash and not withholding any taxes, they don't have them on their books. They know who you're talking about, but they are probably going to act like they don't. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. Exactly. If they're paying somebody under the table, they probably, I mean, if they're a smart business owner, they don't want to advertise that. Okay, Oak Trails, I have a question. Residence income is lessened. For instance, Social Security and disability. Okay, so I'm assuming you are referencing at research. The question is, if a resident's income has changed, like at move-in, okay, at move-in they had both Social Security and disability, but now you're beginning their recertification and they've lost the disability. And your property either only has 60% units or that's all you have available. So you know, very smart to be looking at, can I do something to review their income and requalify them at a lower designation with a rent that's more affordable to them? That's great, but what if we don't have any lower rent restricted units? In that case, I would go ahead and complete, let's see, Oak Trails. Do you have market units? I don't know off the top of my head. Do you have to do full recertifications each year? Well, if you do not have to do full recertifications, okay, self-certs, perfect. Okay, so this is just something I assume you know by the resident coming in and speaking with you, probably because they're struggling to pay rent. There's honestly not a lot that you can do, unfortunately. If you don't have that lower designation available, I would, you know, just kind of as part of our job, it's almost, there's a little social work side to the job where, you know, you're going to want to refer them to housing. You may even want to reach out to your housing office and say, hey, I have someone in a really bad situation. It's either an elderly or disabled person. I would assume, since they have Social Security and disability, he's lost the disability and cannot pay his rent. You know, can you guys, I don't know if they have like an emergency system. Different housing offices do, but not all. But that's about all you can do if you don't have a lower designation available. If you have one available, I would reach out to your compliance manager, confirm that you could requalify this person and do a swap. In other words, do a full set of paperwork on this person. You're going to support his current income. So you're going to prove that currently he's now only, you know, $12,000 annually or whatever. And then you could swap the designations with the assistance of your compliance manager. But again, unfortunately, we would not, there's not a lot else we can do if you don't have lower designations available other than referring them to different outreach programs. In Texas, we all have our service coordinators on site to provide the resident services through Portfolio Resident Services. Make sure this person's on your service coordinator's radar. Make sure they know, and exhaust all of their options, you know, for different kinds of assistance. Kate, are they required to inform us at the time they lose the disability, or are they just required to tell us at the time of recert? Would they be let out of the lease if they can no longer afford the apartment now? They are not required to tell us of interim changes unless the change is an addition to the household. But as far as interim income changes, no, they are not required to tell us at that time. The requirement only comes with the recertification process, or depending on where you're at, the self-certification process. And we typically do not let someone out of a lease because they can no longer afford it. Definitely something I would talk over with your regional manager as to if there are options, but as compliance, I don't want to be the one to speak to that. We definitely don't want, and COVID, we've all seen it, I assume. I've seen it here, households that rent is just piling up on top of them. I've been very lucky here with my residents that it's only happened truly with 2 households where their income situations have changed so dramatically that, you know, they're now 3 months in on rent. You know, they're owing, or well, 2 months, 2 full months. And both of them, their leases are ending soon. They are diligently trying to find a new place to live. But, you know, none of us like to see that. We don't like to see people racking up these huge bills that are just going to go into collections. But there's not, you know, unless we have a lower designation that we can requalify them for, there's really just not a lot we can do tax credit-wise to help them. All right, anything else? I think that is all that, the only thing I had made notes on that I wanted to kind of make the sidebar on was the appraisal districts or the county assessors, kind of figuring out where for your area to find that real estate info. Thank you guys very much. I hope this was helpful. Please send some feedback to either Melissa or myself. We are still trying to kind of figure out what my place is and how many of these little quick Q&As we're going to do. So please give us some feedback on what was helpful, what wasn't helpful. If there's topics you would like to see covered in the future, we can do some YouTube videos or just put together, you know, some more PowerPoints or something. So we want to present what you guys need to hear. So be sure to let us know if what hit the mark and what didn't, and how well it translated. I'm much better in person. I'm an eye contact person. I'm still struggling to get comfortable with the, you know, not having the constant feedback. So hopefully I will get better at this and a little more comfortable, but I would love to know what topics you guys want to hear about. So Melissa, I will give it back to you.
Well, thank you so much. I think you came through really well over the webinar. Personally, I really enjoyed it. All of the add-on information to what we had in the presentation. I think was very valuable. I hope everyone else got something. I think in any training, if you absorb half of it, you did great. And if you can put a couple of new things into practice, that'll just help everybody going forward. And I will send a copy of this presentation out to the group, and just let us know if there's any additional learning opportunities that you see that would help you in your positions. Thank you so much for joining and for your time and attention. Have a great Thursday and a great weekend coming up.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys.